Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Akynu, the Marine's raging dog, exploding with fury when Luffy gets a new bounty after Elbaf would be a scene worthy of shaking the Grand Line, and there's a reason for it. He knew everything about the pirate Luffy would become, and in today's video, we're going to talk about that. Akainu's contempt for Luffy isn't new. At Marineford in Chapter 580, he already marked the Straw Hat as a massive problem, shouting that Luffy, son of Dragon and bearer of the D, needed to be stopped on the spot. He almost kills Luffy with a magma punch that pierces Ace in Chapter 576, showing his determination to crush any threat to the world government. Akainu's absolute justice is relentless. Back in Chapter 397, he destroys a civilian ship just for the risk of harboring an archaeologist. To him, Luffy isn't just a pirate, he's a symbol of chaos with dangerous ties to Dragon. Chapter 589, and the inherited will of Roger. Chapter 967, after Wano, with Luffy's bounty at 3 billion and Yonko's status in Chapter 1058, Akynu must already be clenching his fists, but a new bounty after Elbaf saga, promising epic confrontations with giants and maybe even Shanks, would push his rage to volcanic levels. Why Elbaf would raise Luffy's bounty? Elbaf, home of giants like Dory and Brogy, Chapter 106, is the next big stage after Wano. Luffy, now as Nika, in Chapter 1044, with his Gear 5 turning battles into cartoons, will likely face challenges that solidify his status as a global threat. Imagine him leading the Straw Hats against an enemy like Loki, Prince of Elbaf, or even confronting Shanks, Chapter 1054, whose supreme haki intimidates admirals. Any victory in Elbaf defeating a legendary giant, uncovering Void Century secrets with the Poneglyphs, Chapter 967, or even allying with Shanks against the government would make Luffy's bounty skyrocket maybe to 4 or 5 billion, rivaling Roger's 5,564 millions, Chapter 957. This bounty wouldn't be just for strength, but for impact. Luffy's laughter as Nika in Chapter 1045 inspires uprisings, and his influence, like with the Dressrosa Grand Fleet, Chapter 800, grows exponentially. To Akynu, this would be the ultimate proof he was right at Marineford. Luffy is chaos incarnate, destroying order, Akainu's fury, the collapse of absolute justice. Akainu's reaction to the new bounty would be a spectacle of pure hatred. In Chapter 793, as Fleet Admiral, he already shows disdain for Fujitora's leniency with Luffy in Dressrosa, demanding total marine control. Seeing a poster with Luffy's updated bounty, maybe a picture of Gear 5, laughing as Nika with glowing eyes and flaming hair, Akynu could punch a table, melting it with magma, roaring, "I said that brat needed to be stopped at Marineford. Now he's a monster." His rage would come from 3 fronts. Marineford memories, in Chapter 580, Akynu almost kills Luffy, stopped only by Jinbei and Marco. He saw the potential of the D and the connection to Dragon, the world's most wanted man, Chapter 432. The new bounty would confirm that he underestimated Luffy, who escaped and became a Yonko, humiliating the Marines he commands. Threat of Nika. In Chapter 1114, Vegapunk reveals that the Hito Hito no Mi, model Nika, represents the desire for freedom, monitored by the government for 800 years. Akynu, loyal to Imu, Chapter 1085, would know that Luffy, as the sun god, is a threat to the empty throne, capable of inspiring global revolutions. A higher bounty post-Elbaf would signal that Luffy is closer to Laugh Tale and the One Piece, which is unacceptable to Akynu. Personal failure. Akainu's absolute justice demands eliminating pirates like Luffy. In Chapter 1081, he faces Garp, showing strength, but Luffy's growth makes him appear powerless. A bounty of 4 to 5 billion would be a slap to his authority, especially after failing to capture him at Marineford and letting Fujitora release him in Dressrosa. It would be epic to see Akynu in his Fleet Admiral uniform with smoldering scars, ripping down Luffy's poster, magma dripping from his hands, while ordering, "Mobilize all fleets." That brat won't be laughing for long. His rage would be both personal and professional. Luffy embodies everything Akynu hates: freedom, defiance of authority, and the D. Legacy he tried to burn in Ohara in Chapter 397. How Akynu would react. Akainu's fury wouldn't stop at shouting. As Fleet Admiral, he has the power to mobilize the entire Marines, and a new bounty on Luffy would trigger drastic actions. Full-scale hunt in Chapter 793, Akynu already strengthens the Marines post-Dressrosa. With Luffy's bounty rising, he could launch a global operation, like a buster call on Enies Lobby, Chapter 427, but on a larger scale, sending admirals like Kizaru, Chapter 554, or Fujitora, Chapter 701, to hunt the Straw Hats. Imagine Akynu at HQ with a Grand Line map on fire pointing at Elbaf. "I want the Straw Hat reduced to ashes." Direct confrontation. Akynu could go personally, as he did against Whitebeard in Chapter 550. His Magu no Mi, which melts islands in Chapter 554 would contrast perfectly with Luffy's Gear 5, turning the world into rubber in Chapter 1045. It would be insane to see Akynu, fists of magma raised, facing Luffy's cartoonish laughter, shouting, "You're no god, brat! You're just a dead pirate!" This duel would be the pinnacle of Akainu's rage, trying to extinguish Nika's sun with volcanic fire. Tension with Imu. In Chapter 1085, Imu uses demonic powers to destroy islands, and Akynu, as the government's loyal servant, would likely respond. A higher bounty on Luffy could push Imu to pressure Akynu. "You failed at Marineford, fix it now." Akainu's anger would mix with fear of failure, potentially driving him to extreme measures, even sacrificing allies to capture Luffy, echoing his cruelty in Ohara. This theory is incredible for several reasons. Personal conflict. Akainu's hatred for Luffy, rooted at Marineford in Chapter 576 when he killed Ace, creates an intense emotional arc. Seeing the normally cold Fleet Admiral lose control over a poster of Luffy laughing as Nika would be internet-breaking. It would be like watching the volcano he represents erupt, magma spewing as he shouts, "That brat is laughing at the Marines!" Power scale. Luffy's new post-Elbaf bounty, perhaps 4 to 5 billion, would put him on the level of Roger and Whitebeard. Chapter 957. Akynu facing a Luffy at the peak of Gear 5 who turns the ground into rubber and makes admirals dance in Chapter 1045 would be a clash of titans. Akainu's magma versus Nika's sun is pure symbolism. Order versus freedom, fire versus laughter. World impact. A higher bounty means Luffy is closer to the One Piece and challenging Imu, as Vegapunk suggests in Chapter 1115 about the world sinking. Akainu's fury would trigger a total war, with the Navy mobilizing forces like never before, perhaps even using ancient weapons like Pluton. Chapter 1060. It would be epic to see Luffy leading the Grand Fleet against an enraged Navy, with Akynu at the forefront, eyes burning like lava. Ace's redemption. Luffy's growth is an indirect revenge against Akynu, who killed Ace. A new bounty would be like Luffy saying, "You didn't stop me, Magma Man." It would be insane to see Akynu facing that, with flashbacks of Ace falling in Chapter 576, while Luffy laughs on the poster, showing that the D legacy lives on. Luffy's fleet, like Bartolomeo and Cavendish in Chapter 800, would be ecstatic about the new bounty, with Bartolomeo tattooing the number on his chest. Luffy Senpai is the king, but Akainu's rage would hit allies like Jinbe, who faced magma at Marineford in Chapter 580, or Sabo, who carries Ace's legacy with the Mira Mira in Chapter 744. It would be incredible to imagine Sabo, upon learning of Akainu's fury, saying, "Luffy, this guy killed our brother. Let's burn his justice." The fleet would unite even more, with allies like Law, Chapter 659, and Hancock, Chapter 580, ready to face the Navy, knowing that Luffy's bounty is a war cry. Picture Akynu at the Navy headquarters holding Luffy's poster, the paper burning as he reads the new bounty. His subordinates, like Kizaru or the new vice admirals, step back, feeling the heat of the magma. He might remember Marineford, muttering, "I knew you would be trouble, Straw Hat. I should have incinerated you with Ace." His rage would drive him to extreme orders, perhaps even defying Imu's commands to hunt Luffy alone, as he did against Whitebeard. In Chapter 1081, he faces Garp with attacks that melt mountains. Against Luffy, it would be a battle where the magma tries to extinguish the sun, with Akynu screaming, "Absolute justice does not tolerate false gods." Elbaf is the perfect arc to elevate Luffy's status. Giants like Hadroden have already sworn loyalty to the Grand Fleet, Chapter 800, and a victory against a leader like Loki, or an alliance with Shanks, Chapter 1054, would make Luffy's influence explode. In Chapter 1044, Gear 5 already scares the Gorosei. Post-Elbaf, with more allies, and perhaps a poneglyph read by Robin, Chapter 967, Luffy would become the #1 enemy of the government. Akynu, who lives for order, would see this as a personal insult, especially after failing to stop him before. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.